Good morning, everyone, and thanks for being here. It is 9 o'clock November 9th, and we will call this meeting to order. We're going to ask those who are with us to rise if you are both willing and able for the invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. The invocation will be delivered by Pastor Pam Mason of the St. Paul African Methodist Episcopal Church. Pastor Pam, welcome.
Let us pray. Good morning, God. We embrace this brand new fall day, the opportunity for new possibilities. Lord, we are witnessing swiftly changing times. We celebrate the development and advancement we have witnessed in Wichita. May leadership respond and be grounded in one common goal, acknowledging that every life, every community matters in the same way. Thank you for revealing barriers and enabling the City Council to work through those difficult lessons and effects of intentional divisiveness. Lord, as they continue to meet head-on with listening ears, the effects of the pandemic, the urgency of all residents being well represented, public concerns, operation and administrative challenges. Lord, we pray for well-informed reasoning, wisdom, and sound decision-making. Lord, as matters are brought forth, may they work through resolutions, provide solutions, and develop action plans. Corporately, we surround Mayor Brandon Whipple and each council person, the executive staff, all employees, and volunteers. May they be strengthened, healthy, and safe. We welcome the newly elected council persons and ask that we cover them as they serve with integrity. We pray for the families of our mayor and council persons as they support those who have been elected to serve. Lord, we pray for the current and future residents of ICT. Help ICT as it recovers and restores. Help ICT as new opportunities are unveiled and put into action. Lord, we pray for every component of our communities, that they are what enables us to look toward a bright future. We embrace the challenge and move forward. Help us, oh God, to rely on you. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Thank you, Pastor. Madam Clerk.
Approval of the minutes of the regular meeting on November 2nd, 2021.
Has every member had a chance to review the minutes, and if so, is there any discussion on the minutes? If there is no discussion on the minutes, now make a motion to approve the minutes as they have been presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Vice Mayor Johnson. Clerk will open the roll. Members cast the vote. Having received 7 yea votes, that motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Proclamations, Lung Cancer Awareness Month.
Here to accept the proclamation for lung cancer awareness, please make your way to the front. Proclamation of the City of Wichita, Kansas, founded in 1870. Whereas, lung cancer is the leading cause of cancer death among men and women in the United States and in Sedgwick County in 2021, accounting for more deaths than colon cancer, breast cancer, and prostate cancer combined. Whereas, according to the Center for Disease Control, there were 1,148 deaths because of lung cancer between 2013 and 2017 here in Sedgwick County. Whereas African Americans have the highest lung cancer incidence and mortality of all races, and disparities in lung cancer screening diagnosis, treatment, and mortality are well characterized among African Americans and other racial minorities. Whereas organizations work in the Wichita community, such as the American Lung Cancer Screening Initiative and Women's Lung Cancer Forum, are committed to educating about lung cancer and lung cancer screening and working to increase lung cancer screenings rates in Wichita. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Brandon Whipple, Mayor of the City of Wichita, Kansas, along with the Wichita City Council, do hereby proclaim November 2021 as Lung Cancer Awareness Month in the City of Wichita and recognize the need for research in lung cancer affecting women and lung cancer health disparities. We encourage all citizens to learn about lung cancer and early detection through lung cancer screening. Madam Clerk.
Small Business Saturday.
You are here to receive the proclamation for Small Business Saturday. Please make your way to the front. Sir. See you. How are you? Proclamation of the City of Wichita, Kansas, founded in 1870. Whereas the City of Wichita celebrates our local small businesses and the contributions they make to our local economy and community. Whereas, according to the United States Small Business Administration, there are 31.7 million small businesses in the United States. They represent 99.7% of firms with paid employees, and they are responsible for 65.1% of net new jobs created from 2000 to 2019. And whereas small businesses employ 47.1% of employees in the private sector in the United States, 88% of all U.S. customers feel a personal commitment to support small businesses in the wake of the pandemic, and 92% of small business owners have pivoted the way they do business to stay open during the pandemic. And whereas 97% of Small Business Saturday shoppers recognize the impact they can make by shopping small, 85% of them also encourage friends and family to do so. And now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Brandon Whipple, Mayor of the City of Wichita, Kansas, along with the Wichita City Council, do hereby proclaim November 27th, 2021 as Small Business Saturday in the City of Wichita and urge the residents of our community and communities across the country to support small businesses and merchants on Small Business Saturday and throughout the year.
Oh, I wasn't going to say anything. I was just going to say, definitely encourage you to come out. My name is Stacey Ward Latin. I am a small business owner. I own the Hopping Gnome Brewing Company with my husband, and we always do lots of fun things for Small Business Saturday sale items. It kind of jumps off the kicks off, I guess, the holiday shopping season, and especially after the rough couple years we've had, we just really encourage everybody to shop small. We know how hard it is with larger corporations and trying to get things in the mail and all of that. So I think it's just even more reason to shop small. And I've previously have been a board member of the Douglas Design District, and I've worked with downtown Wichita, and just all of the businesses in the area are going to be doing fun things. So just be on the lookout for social media and everything going on, and just encourage everybody to shop small this holiday season. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Wayne Bell, District Director for the U.S. Small Business Administration here in Wichita. And I want to thank Mayor Brandon Whipple for all of his hard work. He has pulled together actually just at the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, he pulled together a small business task force which really consisted of business owners in the area, collaborating, discussing challenges, issues that they had to navigate to continue to stay afloat throughout the pandemic. Certainly, our community demonstrated great resilience. Many of the small business owners represented today just found ways to continue. Certainly, there were resources made available by way of the Small Business Administration and many others, By the way, I want to congratulate our COVID Community Task Force, which continues to meet. We actually began meeting, Jeff Fleur and many others, we began meeting as a part of the 737 MAX grounding, which took us right into the COVID-19 pandemic. All of these efforts, and certainly our small business community, just demonstrated a great community, great resilience, and just the ability to continue to move forward despite incredible challenges. So I want to encourage everyone, not only on November the 27th, to go out and be intentional about supporting small businesses. Let's continue to do so throughout the year, because these business owners, they've created jobs. You've heard the statistics that the mayor shared. They really account for over 55% of all of the private sector jobs throughout Kansas. So, with all that to say, let's celebrate small businesses on November 27th during Small Business Saturday, and certainly throughout the year. We've got a great community, and I thank you all for just a few minutes this morning. Thank you.
Madam Clerk.
Public agenda. Rachel Mayberry, releasing ARPA funds to be accessed by community organizations.
All right, rolling into our public agenda. Welcome.
Good morning, Mayor, and
Morning.
good morning, City Council. I appreciate this opportunity to speak before you this morning. My name is Rachel Mayberry. I'm the Senior Director of Public Policy at HeartSpring, and I am a registered lobbyist with the state of Kansas. I represent HeartSpring at 8700 East 29th Street in Wichita, and we are in Councilperson Tuttle's district. HeartSpring has been in the Wichita community since 1934. We employ close to 500 employees, and we serve almost 1,000 children from 17 counties through therapeutic and educational supports. On March 11th, 2021, President Biden approved the American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA, guaranteeing direct relief funds to cities and towns across the U.S. intended to combat COVID-19 pandemic. The U.S. Department of Labor says the goal of ARPA was to provide immediate relief. With the goal of providing immediate relief, we encourage this body to quickly and efficiently distribute ARPA funds to our community. To put this in perspective, HeartSpring closed or reduced services in our outpatient services twice, with a loss of $2.12 million. We paid more than $1.24 million in hazard and hero pay and COVID pay, with the amount growing due to OSHA's requirement that we continue to offer unlimited paid COVID leave due to being a healthcare provider. We have scheduled, canceled, or modified 10 events with a combined impact of almost $200,000, and we have spent more than $110,000 in PPE and cleaning equipment. Now we are looking at a $300,000 bill a month to test our employees for COVID-19 due to KDHE discontinuing funding for MDL. HeartSpring serves some of the most vulnerable children in our community. Not testing our staff is neither responsible nor respective to our families who trust us to provide services to their families. Because of this loss in revenue and added expenses, we will be seeking a combined $14 million in ARPA funding from the state, county, and city. For those of you not involved in the Spark Committee, they have said that they are looking for combined money from the city and county in order to disperse state funding as well. Unlike other healthcare and education organizations, we did not qualify for most of the federal relief funding that was released over the last 18 months. With that money, the $14 million combined, we have three primary objectives: frontline healthcare employee relief, transitional housing, and workforce development. We employ 500 people across Wichita, making us one of the largest nonprofits in the area. Our essential frontline healthcare workers were not eligible for the same rescue funding as other healthcare organizations. However, we have similar staffing crises. Fatigue, burnout, childcare insecurity, and inadequate rates of pay plague our industry and our organization. We increased our minimum wage at the beginning of November to $15 an hour for all staff. We are enhancing staff training and development to exceed pre-COVID levels. We are partnering with WSU Tech to provide direct service professional access to direct care badge program at no cost to the employee. And we want to invest in our community by building an on-site child care facility to support shift work. Within transitional housing, our goal is to prepare students aging out of secondary education systems for greater independence and lifelong success. By building 3 transitional homes on our campus, we will give 12 students the opportunity to experience a more independent setting prior to moving to their adult community setting. According to the CDC, 17% of children ages 3 through 17 have a developmental or intellectual disability. This is an increasing trend over time and represents the future of our entire workforce. We must prepare our children now to be skilled and engaged community members while preparing our local businesses to be inclusive, diverse, and supportive employers. Within our workforce development, we want to provide consultations statewide on how to prepare children for the workforce and train community-based professionals on how to work with them and employ children with intellectual and developmental disabilities. We also want to support children and families to help them achieve greater independence and autonomy. HeartSpring believes the most strategic leverage point is to invest in our community, and we want to ensure access and opportunities for all. An investment of ARPA funding will provide good-paying jobs, educational supports, modernization to infrastructure, affordable transitional housing, and expanded workforce training. Again, we urge you to quickly and efficiently find a way to distribute the ARPA funds to our community. I thank you for this opportunity, and I will stand for any questions.
It doesn't seem like there's any questions, so thank you so much.
Thanks.
All right, Madam Clerk.
Consent agenda items 1 through 17.
Has every member had a chance to review the consent agenda, and if so, is there any discussion? If there is no discussion on the consent agenda, then I'll make a motion to accept staff's recommended action and accept the consent agenda as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded by Vice Mayor Johnson. Clerk will open a roll. Members cast the vote. Having received 7 yea votes, that motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Board of Bids and Contracts dated November 8th, 2021.
Good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, City Council. Hannah Lang, Department of Finance, here for the November 8th Board of Bid recommendations. First engineering bid we have is sanitary sewer rehab Phase 1A. All bids rejected. Mosley Street Bridge and 20th Street Bridge, Wildcat Construction for $58,400. Streetlight and traffic system maintenance and repair, Phillips Southern Electric for $31,950. Streaming movie subscription for library, Canopy Incorporated for $50,000. Emergency repairs at various golf courses, Charles Sargent Irrigation Incorporated for $114,027.31. Pump for Lift Station 56, Ray Lindsay Company for $86,670. This is our purchasing procurement website, as well as our current open request for proposals. With that, I'll stand for any questions.
All right, is there questions for staff? See none. Thank you. Is there input from the public? See none, we'll bring discussion back to the bench. Is there discussion on this item? If there is no discussion on this item, then I'll make a motion to accept staff's recommended action to receive and file, approve the contracts, and authorize the necessary signatures. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is seconded by Vice Mayor Johnson. Clerk will open a roll. Members cast their vote. Having received 7 yea votes, that motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Petitions for public improvements.
Good morning.
Good morning. Mayor and council members, Gary Jansen, Public Works Engineering. We have 3 developments for you today. All have revised petitions to meet current market conditions. The signatures on all petitions represent 100% of the improvement district, and all petitions are valid per Kansas statute. The first development is Schulte Johnson, second edition, south of Pawnee, west of Mays in District 4. In September of 2020, City Council approved petitions for water, sewer, and paving improvements. The developers now submitted revised petitions with increased budgets to cover costs for a private bid. All three of these developments today are being done by private agreement previously approved by the City Council. The next development is North 45th Edition, south of 45th Street Northeast of Ridge Road in District 6. In May of 2021, City Council approved the original petitions. Today is a revised petition for stormwater drain improvements. The last development is Northgate 5th Edition, north of 53rd Street North, west of Meridian in District 6. In May of this year, the City Council approved petitions for water, sewer, and paving improvements to serve this development. And again, revised petitions have now been submitted for increased budgets for water, sewer, storm sewer, and paving improvements. Staff recommends City Council approve the revised petitions and budgets, adopt the amending resolutions, and authorize the necessary signatures.
Is there questions for staff? Seeing none. Thank you. Is there input from the public? Seeing none, we'll bring discussion back to the bench. Is there discussion on this item? If there's no further discussion, then I'll make the motion to accept staff's recommended action to approve the revised petitions and budget, adopt the amending resolutions, and authorize the necessary signatures. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Vice Mayor Johnson. Clerk will open a roll. Members cast the vote. Having received 7 yea votes, that motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Approval of amendments to the development agreement and parking agreement with Douglas Market Development, LLC, and public hearing and resolution of intent to issue industrial revenue bonds for property for WSU Tech Culinary School.
Good morning and welcome.
Good morning. Mark Gilder with the Office of Economic Development. That item for you today, which was fairly lengthy, is related to a downtown project that involves 4 different buildings. I'll kind of give you a little recap of where we are. They started back about 2018, 2019. This is a development that developers taken on 4 different buildings in downtown, where you have up on the north there in the red, that is the former Broadway Plaza building that will be converted into an AC Marriott hotel. In the blue, 130 South Market it was the former state office building, is now going to be the Kansas Health Science Center. To the right of that on Broadway, there's 124th South Broadway, which is a former Henry's building, but will be converted into a culinary school, as well as to the south, there is in the yellow would be Sutton Place, or former Sutton Place will be converted into student housing related to the Kansas Health Science Center. A little more background on project update of where we are today. So the Kansas Health Science Center is on pace for the building to be complete by December 30th of this year. And the school itself, the Kansas Health Science Center, is on pace for the accreditation. There are several steps they go through, currently in candidacy status, but this allows the school to recruit and reach the pre-accreditation, which will happen next year. They don't actually receive full accreditation, I believe, until their first round of students graduate. So it's a long process, and it takes a while to get there, but they are on pace from where they need to be to make that happen. 124 South Broadway, they recently announced this summer the major tenant, which will be Wichita State WSU Tech's culinary school called Niche, or Niche, I'm not sure. I should have asked beforehand how to pronounce that for them. Then 105 South Broadway, they have an operating agreement signed with AC Marriott for the hotel. 209 East William is still on pace to be the student housing related to the Housing Health Science Center. I wanted to include some updated photos for the progress that is being made. A lot of this started with facade improvements on the outside of the building. You can see here with the new windows and the new canopies going on for the Health Science Center. Inside, this is the entrance there with the lighting and the kind of stadium seating right there at the entrance facing Broadway, as well as some classroom and hallways. You can see that they're moving along quite rapidly for the finishes for that building. And I believe this is a lecture hall with upper and lower tiered seating for that. With that, I'm going to hand this over to Tim Goodpasture to kick off the discussion regarding the WSU Tech request.
Good morning, Mayor and City Council members. I'm Tim Goodpasture with the City's Office of Economic Development. For the record, the request here is from Douglas Market Development, LLC, or DMD, which has entered into a lease with Wichita State University Technical School, or WSU Tech, for a culinary school to be called Niche. WSU has requested a 5-year property tax abatement on their portion of the building, which is approximately 88% of 124 South Broadway. DMD has agreed to pay a payment in lieu of taxes to maintain the TIF base amount for all taxing jurisdictions. So all taxing jurisdictions will continue to get what they are getting today in property taxes, and DMD has also agreed to pay an origination fee related to the IRBs. DMD has also agreed to provide a TIF shortfall guarantee of 50% of the difference between the TIF bonded debt and the revenue generated by the area. This is substantial because if WSU were to own and operate the building, it would be tax exempt as a not-for-profit educational institution and would not generate any revenue towards the TIF. The property tax abatement requires a non-substantial change to the Center City South TIF district to remove the building from the project area to allow for the 5-year property tax abatement. The developer has also requested a 1-month extension for the completion of the project from July of 2022 to August of 2022. These are some photos of the interior demolition of the building and the renovations that are underway at this time. And then these are some of the renovations that are being done to the rooftop facility at 124 South Broadway. The estimated value of 100% property tax abatement based on a $10 million investment in the building is approximately $143,000 for all taxing jurisdictions and approximately $40,000 for the city. Again, DMD has agreed to pay a payment in lieu of taxes annually for the tax abatement period of approximately $3,000 a year and $23,000 a year in an annual origination fee. WSU Tech has projected that it will create 52 net new jobs at approximately $32,000 a year in annual revenue as a result of this project. A cost-benefit analysis was conducted by the Center for Economic Development and Business Research at Wichita State University, which showed an overall ratio of benefits to costs of 2.02 to 1 for the city, 1.31 to 1 for the city's general fund, and 3.80 to 1 for the city's debt service fund, all of which are above the requirements in our guidelines of 1.01 to 1 for these ratios. I will now turn this back over to Mark Elder to talk about the TIF.
And Tim discussed this briefly, but for the TIF district modification, it does require removing 124 South Broadway from the project area. The project area is just the single block there that is block 1, and you can see the highlighted 2 parcels that would be removed from that. This does allow WSU Tech to receive the property tax abatement for the 5 years. And with that, the property actually still remains within the TIF district, but not within the project area, and therefore it would generate additional tax revenue for the debt service after that abatement expires. As well as the other buildings, we have updates as well as what is included in the amendment that's being requested today. Construction delays related to COVID-19 as well as some of the supply issues have created supply chain as well as construction crew challenges with completing all 4 of those buildings on time, and therefore the developers request an extension for 105 South Broadway, which was the hotel, from March 2022 to December 22 to complete that project. This building is related to both a CID as well as a TIF, separate from the one that is being discussed. There's 2 types of project areas. This one is in a TIF project area related to the Chester Lewis Park. The CID revenues will commence July 2022 and not be collected but they will still continue to be collected for 22 years. The first 6 months of the hotel may not be operational during that time. That has to do with when this was originally adopted. July was set as the start date for that. So it's a delay of 6 months on that. There is no anticipated impact on the TIF related to the point that it will be complete by December of that year, so it still counts for that tax year for that. So with that, but it does have the 6 months of CID that does not go to the developer on that. On 209 East William, which will be the student housing, again, this faced the construction delays, and they've had to shift around where the workers are focusing their efforts. And so the developers request an extension on this one from August of 2022 to December 2023 to complete that project. But with that, because this one is related to a property tax abatement, that abatement has also been reduced by a year for that project, so they'd only receive 9 years of a property tax abatement rather than the traditional 10 years. To accommodate both the Kansas Health Science Center as well as Niche, there has been a request to make some amendments to the parking agreement. First would be to increase the minimum available spaces in the Market Street garage from what's agreed today of 150 up to 200 spaces. And also the Market Street garage would also begin 6 months earlier, so it would begin in January of next year rather than July or August. But then also the pricing structure has been simplified based on the location of where the parking is rather than a different rate between students and faculty, the users. I want to kind of recap where the parking is associated with this development. So the blue buildings there are, again, the buildings that are being redeveloped today as part of this project, and the red are the 4 city-owned parking facilities that are related to the parking agreement. I want to kind of recap where we are on the requested deadlines for this project. And with this, the Kansas Health Science Center, it's unchanged. It's still on pace to be completed in August 2022. The culinary school, and that's to be open. The building is planned to be completed by the end of this year for keep it on pace with their accreditations. The culinary school is where it was moved from March 22 to August 2022. Actually, I think that was flipped as July to August. The hotel is from July 2022 to December, as well as the student housing is from August to December of the following year. A few other minor changes to the development agreement, but still to be put in there. We have added excusable delays to include contractor and subcontractor or supplier delays as a reasonable, excusable delay for the project. Also updated some legal descriptions related to minor lane transfers, related to access to the Kansas Health Science Center. And the developer has requested an assignment of the development agreement to affiliated entities for tax credit purposes. So it's still same ownership, but they had to assign it to a new LLC for the benefit of this tax credit purposes. There's a lot in there to unpack. We do have representatives of both the Kansas Health Science Center, Niche, the developer, as well as the contractor related to this that can answer some of those construction-related delays, but as well, staff will stand for questions.
All right, questions for staff. Chair recognizes Councilman Bluebog.
Mayor? Is this typical? Is this something we've done before where WSU or a non-taxable entity is a tenant, not the owner, and we allow the tax exemption for the property taxes? I assume the 5 years is because there's a 5-year lease?
Okay, thank you. Absolutely.
We have done this before where there is a concern about property tax abatement. The 5-year tax abatement, as opposed to a traditional 10-year tax abatement, was to allow WSU to establish the program and get up and running without having to pay the property taxes on the property. We have previously approved, for instance, Groover Labs was another one that was approved for a property tax abatement for a 10-year period under concerns that they may or may not be able to utilize their ownership entity as a not-for-profit. So this scenario where a not-for-profit is the quote-unquote tenant in the building but is not the owner of the building is not an uncommon situation for us to encounter. And in the state of Kansas, it is not the user that necessarily drives the property tax abatement, but is a combination between the ownership as well as the user of the building that drives whether a property tax abatement is available for the property.
Think of any other examples? Do you know of any other university property or anything?
And I cannot, because typically if a not-for-profit owns and operates the facility, then they would be eligible in perpetuity for a property tax abatement.
How about the, on the student housing, it looks like there's almost a 15-month delay, and the other delays look like 6 months. Is there any reason why that's kicked out so much further than the other delays?
I cannot answer that question. I don't know if the developer or the contractor would be interested in answering that question, but I cannot answer that question.
Yeah, we've actually just concentrated our efforts more.
You'll want to come down to the podium, please.
Welcome, sir.
I'm Scott Wolfington with Coonrod and Associates Construction, and we've basically just made our efforts more towards the school to make sure we got that completed on time. That's the biggest time frame that we had to complete, and so the student housing will be started right after we get done with this, so. That's
So it's not necessarily a supply chain issue, it's more of a,
Well,
maybe getting workers
It's
or-
manpower and everything. If we could have had the manpower and the supply chain, we could have started it at the same time, but we're pushed for what we're doing right now.
Okay.
Yeah, the supply chain is bad. I talked to a roofer yesterday that told me he ordered a truckload of TPO roofing. They told him he would get that next October. So this is just starting. It's going to get real bad.
Do you think these dates that you're requesting today, or do you think you guys will be able to
No, I
meet
think
those? Or
these dates should be good.
Other questions for staff? Thank you, sir. I will open up to input from the public. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and City Council, Mr. Manager. Jeff Fleur, President of Downtown Wichita and the Great Wichita Partnership, 505 East Douglas Avenue. Appreciate the opportunity this morning to come before you to speak in support of this project and also the request before you as far as to help move this project toward completion. Project Downtown, the master plan for downtown, has provided incredible guidance for the development of our city center over now almost 11 years. 2010 is when it was adopted. Since its adoption, over $1 billion has been invested in our city center. And part of that has happened certainly for a number of reasons, but one in particular, I think, is because of the strategic investment that's been made by the public sector in infrastructure, in the parks, in the streets, and with project developments, as we have seen with the request this morning. In that $1 billion, about $750 million has been private, to about $250 million in the public. So you can kind of see that ratio there of how that strategic investment by you as the public sector has really been a catalyst for the private investment. The Kansas Health Science Center certainly furthers the vision of this plan. If you think about now, we're activating 4 buildings in 3 blocks. As you know, each project, we hope, builds to the next one. Now that we have done 4 buildings, and I say it's really the developers and those investing in it, have now done 4 buildings in 3 blocks. It now sets the stage that we want to do 5 buildings in 6 blocks. So again, it kind of hits us in a mark to show the progressiveness of our city center. Those who are investing in us is extremely important when you think about talent in creating that vital city for our downtown. The other part that this project is doing is activating Chester I. Lewis. It's totally redeveloping it to celebrate Chester I. Lewis in all the legacy that he has, to not only communicate what he did do, but also, I think, create the stage of what we can do as a community. And so again, I think another huge asset of this project that will be activating Douglas Avenue. Educational facilities are outlined in the Project Downtown Master Plan as a critical use in our downtowns. And if you look at vibrant cities across the country, education is at the core of this. And so again, with this moment of opportunity with the National Institute for Culinary and Hospitality Education, this building is actually reactivating a building that's been sitting vacant for decades. Mark mentioned Block 1, which I'm glad he did, because this building, this use, will complete Block 1. People may say, well, what's Block 1? When we started the implementation of the master plan back in 2010, in 2011, we had the opportunity, again, working with you as the public sector, to activate almost an entire city block. You built new public infrastructure with a new garage that activated the development of the Kansas Leadership Center, which infill development, which is incredible today, world-renowned as far as what they're doing with leadership, and then also the development of the Ambassador Hotel. And today, thinking about the future, you have created an asset that helps us fulfill the fulfilling, if you will, of making that building activated again. But it also reinforces in education the connection between WSU, WSU Tech, and downtown. Again, huge opportunities for us as we go forward. So together, we look at these projects as being huge, ushering in, if you will, future opportunity in our downtown and their completion. We also see, if you go to higher altitude, the regional growth plan talks about healthcare as an industry sector we should be investing in. It fulfills the regional growth plan. And you connect that even to a statewide with the framework for growth. So we're accomplishing a number of things with this project. So with that, we appreciate the opportunity to come before you this morning to speak in support of it and certainly answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
See none, thank you. Further input on this item? Seeing none, we'll bring discussion back to the bench. Is there further discussion on this item? Chair recognizes Councilmember Tuttle.
Thank you. Due to a conflict of interest, I will be abstaining from this vote.
Is that there any further discussion? If there's no further discussion, then I will recognize Councilmember or Vice Mayor Johnson, as this resides in District 1, for a motion.
Thanks, Mayor.
Vice Mayor Johnson.
Thanks, Mayor. So before I make the motion, I would say I'm a little concerned with the supply chain. Things are moving slower than honey, and we just want to make sure that we hit those deadlines. I know that there was confidence there, but I just hope that the supply chain keeps up so that those dates are hit. Aside from that, that's my only real concern. So with that, I would move that the City Council adopt the resolution authorizing the execution of Development Agreement Number 1, Parking Agreement Amendment Number 1, general assignments relating to the Skywalk Agreement and certain other documents, adopt the resolution authorizing the issuance of industrial revenue bonds relating to the culinary school and approving certain related documents, and pass on first reading the ordinance approving a non-substantial change to the district plan for the Center City South Redevelopment District.
And I will second the motion. Clerk will open the roll. Members cast their votes. Having received 6 yea votes to 1 abstain, that motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Petition to amend the Chicken and Pickle Community Improvement District.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor, members, City Council. Mark Elder again with the Office of Economic Development. The item for you today is actually to set a public hearing for amendment of the Chicken and Pickle Community Improvement District. So the original project was approved at 13th and Greenwich, included both the development of a Chicken and Pickle outdoor and indoor restaurant and recreation center, as well as included some undeveloped parcels that were along both 13th and Greenwich. The developer has a new tenant that would be within the district, but they have petitioned to have that parcel that the tenant will be having be removed from the district. So basically that means that the tenant can still be in that parcel, but they will not be induced to be having that extra sales tax related to their services. But this does require setting a public hearing regarding that boundary change, and so today the action is requesting that public hearing for December. Just a little background on this. This is the existing CID. Apparently I used an old map because it does not have Chicken Pickle on there, but it's on the southeast corner. But it does include where you can see 13th and Greenwich, as well as those parcels right there along Greenwich Street. The 2 parcels that will be removed, one is kind of more or less just cleaning it up now that they have a better layout there. But you can see on the south end is where the Tommy's Car Wash should be, and they're the ones that are petitioning to be removed from the CID, which leaves a new boundary here, as depicted here in, I guess, purple or lavender. With that, I'll stand for any questions. Otherwise, we'll be requesting for the public hearing on December 7th.
Are there questions for staff? See none. Thank you. Is there input from the public on this item? See none. We'll bring discussion back to the bench. Is there discussion on this item? If there is no further discussion, the chair recognizes Councilmember Tuttle as this item resides in District 2.
Thank you. Thanks to staff for all your work on this, and I move that the City Council accept the petition and adopt the resolution setting a public hearing for December 7th, 2021, and authorize the necessary signatures.
Second.
Motion has been made and then seconded by the Vice Mayor. Clerk will open the roll. Members cast the vote. Having received 7 yea votes, that motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Library naming recommendation.
Good morning. I'm
Good
Jamie
morning.
Prothro, the Director of Libraries, and I'm absolutely delighted to be talking to you about the Evergreen renaming, as I served as the first Evergreen branch manager back in November of 2002. We opened it originally 19 years ago. So in December, the City Council approved the Library Board to serve as the naming committee for determining what we would call this new venture, where we bring together library, the Neighborhood Resource Center, and a number of critical partners to be able to provide social and empowerment services. The process that we used, there was a solicitation of name ideas. That was about 70 different names, I believe, that were brought together to consider for what this new venture would be called. And we narrowed that down to 5 top names that were then taken out to the public to be able to rank, discuss, kind of learn what was important and critical for the community. And there was eventually this recommendation. So the community engagement included, including survey links on all sorts of technology platforms, website, radio spots, postcards at community events. We did bring forward to District 6 as well, a board presentation. There was additional community outreach to schools and businesses within the library, the city, District 6, social media, the mayor's briefing, and also some print surveys were out and about in the community. The top 5 votes included El Norte, the North, Evergreen, which is the current name, meaning always growing, Artiega, for an incredibly important man in Wichita's history who created the El Pueblo neighborhood recreation center. El Pueblo, which is the village, and Adelante, which means go ahead or move forward. So that was put to community to identify which they preferred as far as the name, and you can see the ranked results, which includes Evergreen as the clear winner. Which at that point, the library board brought it to discussion. And in that discussion, I think it was really important for recognizing that this is a change in service model. And so the name really did need to represent what the mission and vision of this project was to include. It also was important for the library board to really identify that libraries continue to play an integral role in neighborhoods. People consider the library as a safe, friendly, inviting space to connect with people, conduct research, work on schoolwork, build their businesses, or learn about current topics or trends. And it's really the only place in our society where you can come and visit and stay and not be expected to pay anything. I think additionally, the amount of support that the library and community center, resource center provides for non-English-speaking residents is important for them to see themselves in their community. I think I could go on and on about the importance of public libraries in the community, but it's really important that the Evergreen community not lose the identity of the original community space. And that's the public library coupled with incredible resources that are being brought together under this roof. I think, so it was clear from the committee that there should be facility functions, that the facility functions as a one-stop community center, and additionally that the library remain in the naming. I'd like to invite our operations committee chair, Jonathan Winkler, who helped to kind of coordinate the conversations with the library board to kind of share some of his comments about how this went.
Thank you.
Welcome.
The new community center is in the part of town near an area that is developed in the late 1880s, excuse me. Then later, after the Spanish Revolution, became home to the Spanish American community in this town. And the area that was developed after World War II. So we want to make sure we engaged all parts of the combined community. Therefore, we organized our outreach to be bilingual. We were struck by how strong Evergreen was. It had 41% of the top ratings. And we received comments in favor in both English and Spanish. For both phases of public engagement, we provided the ability to give comments in free text. We realized that a large part of the community for this is important, that their new community center also be identified as a library. They do not feel community center by itself conveys what the library can offer to the community. Therefore, these are the basics on which we developed the recommendation. I would like to finish by thanking the many members of the community who took time to let us do what we thought. Thank you.
Thank you.
So the naming committee's recommendation is to call the center an Evergreen Branch Library and Community Center. We did run this through our law department, and it complies with requirements for naming public facilities, and there are no financial implications. So to you, the recommendation is that the City Council approves the recommendation made by the Library Board of Directors. Stand for any questions.
Are there questions for staff? See none, thank you. Is there input from the public on this item? See none, bring discussion back to the bench. Is there discussion on this item? Vice Mayor Johnson.
Thanks, Mayor. Just want to say, I also was surprised by the name, because on social media, I saw some other names kind of floating. But I appreciated that testimony and learning more about the engagement and how everyone was reached out to. So I'll definitely be supportive of the name.
Further discussion? There is no further discussion, then I will recognize Councilmember Claycomb as this resides in District 6.
Thank you. And before I make a motion, I just have some comments. I first want to thank former council member Janet Miller, who actually started this initiative of creating a community center in District 6. And we would not be here without her experience and expertise as a former council member. I also want to thank Jonathan Winkler for being here today. His long-term experience on the library board is just invaluable, and he served well as the lead in the renaming effort of this. And I really appreciate the work of the library board of directors. They have great experience now in naming facilities, so they were quite helpful and allowed me to participate in their efforts. I appreciate the community's involvement in voting on the names, and it became evident that Evergreen was well recognized and a loved name for the center there, and so I think that that is a good choice. This center is an innovative approach in Wichita. You know, we may see this in other parts of the country, but we're not seeing this type of center anywhere else in Wichita, and it is a new model. It is a community center, and I think it's important to realize this also, as the agenda report recognizes it as an anchor institution, and it is more than just the individual parts. As the library board suggested, I do recognize, though, including library in the name to ensure that the community knows that the branch library remains at this location, particularly after a little bit of a prolonged absence while we were working on this facility. So after discussion with tenants and community members and staff, I recommend adopting the Library Board of Directors naming recommendation with a minor modification. What I'd like to do is move that the City Council approve the name Evergreen Community Center and Library.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? If not, clerk will open a roll, members cast the vote. Having received 7 yea votes, that motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
2022 Sewer Collection and Water Distribution Mains Replacement Program.
Madam Clerk, are we on item 4 or 5?
Sorry. 2022 Arterial Water Mains.
You're the boss, so we could do item 5 if you want, Madam Clerk, but. Yes, sir. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, Mayor and Council members. Gary Jansen, Public Works Engineering. The item before you this morning is a request for funding for 2022 arterial water mains. The adopted capital improvement program includes annual funding for projects involving replacement or relocation of water mains located within arterial street right-of-way. This work would be done in conjunction with improvements to those arterial streets that are also funded in the CIP. This is due to conflicts with proposed improvements or replacement due to age, material, ground cover issues, or leak history. And I might elaborate a little bit on that. Again, we have projects that are funded in the CIP for arterial street improvements. We take the opportunity. Typically, we have medium to larger size water mains within that street right-of-way. So we look at the opportunity for that whole mile to relocate or replace water mains as needed. First and foremost, we look at the condition and leak history. We look at the size to make sure that's still serving us as needed within the entire system. And then the work that gets done is relative to the improvements. But this has been a good program for us, again, to update some of our medium to larger size water mains while we're making improvements to arterial streets at the same time. Projects planned for design and/or construction in 2022, as funding allows, includes West Street from Harry to Pawnee, and continued improvements with the North Junction require relocation and/or replacement of our facilities in the area of that project. 159th Street East, Kellogg to Central. Kansas Turnpike is going to be doing work on bridges at 47th Street South and Hydraulic, as well as 55th Street South, which will bring into place some of our existing water mains in the area. 29th Street North, I-135 to Meade is scheduled for improvements in 2023, so we'll be looking at design for water main improvements there if needed, and then the West Street corridor from I-235 to 47th Street South. The adopted CIP includes $2 million in 2022 for this project, which staff recommends initiating at this time. Staff recommends City Council approve the project, adopt the resolution, authorize the necessary signatures, and I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Questions for staff? Vice Mayor Johnson.
Thanks, Mayor. Gary, I haven't had enough time to do my homework on this one, but Saturday, Alan brought up a really good point, maybe not concerned about how some of the corrosion from the salt from the highway sometimes will pool in one area and potentially impact the system. Is that being taken into account as well when you look at relocating some of the water mains where that might pool currently?
You know, it will be now. We still don't know for sure yet on the 42-inch break. It's something that's being evaluated. Expect to have results soon. It's something that the company that has expertise in this asked us about first. So we've done some analysis of that soils to see. It's not something that we had thought about, honestly, in the past, but we'll take a closer look at now. So on most of our arterial streets that are improved to an urban section, you would not see the same situation as you do on a highway with an uncontained, unconfined edge of roadway where you get that drainage off into the ditch. But it's still something that we will be looking at more going forward than we had in the past, sure.
Thank you.
Councilmember Frye.
Thank you. Pardon me. Gary, as it relates to 159th Street, Kellogg to Central, is that not the county line road? And is that all costs going to be borne by us, or is it going to be shared with Butler County?
as part of our agreement with the city of Andover, that is still our water system and our cost responsibility. The Sedgwick County line is right down the middle of 159th Street, and so that's actually an Andover project. But per our longstanding agreement with the city of Andover and how our water system works with them, that is our cost responsibility. And that's included within projects like this. We see those things coming. We try to work ahead of time with our partner communities to make sure that we've got that included in these budgets.
Thank you.
Further questions for staff? See none. Is there input from the public on this item? There is none. We'll bring discussion back to the bench. Is there discussion on this item? If there is no further discussion, then I will make the motion to accept staff's recommended action to approve the project, adopt the resolution, and authorize the necessary signatures. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Vice Mayor Johnson. Clerk will open the roll. Members cast the vote. Have received 7 yea votes. That motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
2022 Sewer Collection and Water Distribution Mains Replacement Programs.
Welcome back.
Thank you. Again, Gary Jansen, Public Works and Engineering. The next item before you this morning is funding for sewer collection and water distribution mains replacement program for 2022. This has been a program we've had for some time that serves us well each year in looking at our neighborhood water distribution systems and sewer collection systems primarily. The adopted capital improvement program includes funding for annual projects for replacing and rehabilitating failing water and sewer infrastructure. The sewer collection mains replacement program helps to replace or rehabilitate sewers that have failed or found to be in critical condition as a result of unexpected and unplanned stoppages and stoppages and backups. And again, the majority of our funding is generally spent in neighborhoods, existing neighborhoods. We work closely with our sewer maintenance division. They televise existing systems. We evaluate the condition of those systems and develop projects from that. The water distribution mains replacement program decreases the number of unexpected water main breaks, bringing undersized mains to current standards and improves fire protection. The majority of the water lines in our system, out of the 2,400 miles, the largest percentage is pipes that are generally 8 inches smaller. So it serves us well and provides the best return on investment to replace. We end up replacing approximately 5 to 8 miles of water distribution system every single year, particularly within those residential areas. This program replaces water lines that have failed or have been determined to be in critical condition after multiple breaks and are beyond the means of city crews to repair. So this is absolutely based on leak history and condition analysis for these main replacements. Neighborhood water main replacement projects planned for design and construction in 2022 include the area from Murdoch to 13th Street North, Belmont to Harding, Murdoch to Central, and Pyatt to Hillside, from Douglas to Central, west of Webb Road, and the area from 13th Street North to 21st Street North between Minnesota and I-135. Sewer collection replacement program is being developed now, and so we'll know more about what those projects look like in early 2022. The adopted CIP includes $5.8 million for each of these projects. Staff recommends the City Council approve the projects and budgets, adopt the resolutions, and authorize the necessary signatures, and I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Other questions for staff? I have one, although it's not directly about this item. Has there been any analysis with the new infrastructure bill that was passed in Washington this week, as far as long as it's signed, as far as if that will help us with future costs for replacement of pipes and other infrastructure?
So as the legislation was being developed, we have looked at different areas because every time there's new bills like this, there's generally opportunities for funding that maybe we haven't seen in the past. So we're working on that now, Mr. Mayor. We've got some experts within the community that we work with are looking on that and informing us. I've been in touch with some people at the state level who also expect to receive some funding through that that is supposed to be focused towards water infrastructure in particular. So we're hoping to follow up on that and see where we might end up. So yeah, it's something that we are pursuing.
I'm sure that my fellow council members would be in agreement with a request for a memo when you all have an analysis of what Wichita could be benefiting from because of that bill. So
Absolutely, we'll do that.
thank you. Further questions for staff? Vice Mayor Johnson.
Thanks, Mayor. One little question. So as we're looking at the collection mains, I'm assuming that's also like stormwater runoff? Is that what that is?
No, this is for sanitary sewer collection systems only, and not with the stormwater system.
Okay.
We've got a separate decision support tool that goes with that, and something that our director and others are working on now. That'll be a separate program from what we're looking at today.
Okay.
All right. Any further questions for staff? See none. Is there any input from the public on this item? Seeing none, we'll bring discussion back to the bench. Is there further discussion on this item? If there is no further discussion, then I'll make the motion to accept staff's recommended action to approve the programs and budgets, adopt the resolution, authorize necessary signatures. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Vice Mayor Johnson. Clerk will open the roll. Members cast the vote. Having received... Okay.
Closed it before I finished pushing it.
Councilmember Fry, did you cast your vote? Okay.
Tried to, but it closed.
So we have
before I did.
7 yay votes. However, I believe that Councilmember Fry has given us a thumbs up to also be a yay vote. So
It's a yay.
So may the record reflect that we have 7 yay votes, and therefore the motion does pass.
That was slow as honey.
I do the emperor's thumb. All right, Madam Clerk.
Funding and change order limit adjustment for the Aquatics Master Plan Phase 3 aesthetic design.
Good morning, Troy.
Good morning, Mayor, Council. Troy Houtman, Director of Parks and Recreation, and with me is Gary Jans, who's going to help present, as well as Brian Hill. The item that we're going to be discussing is in regards to moving forward with the Aquatics Master Plan Phase 3. A little bit of background. The Aquatics Master Plan will provide about $25 million worth of improvements between this past year, 2020, and 2023. That includes all 3 phases of the Aquatics Master Plan. It's a plan that we have brought to council in the past and was actually approved back in June 4th of 2019. The Phase 3 will rehabilitate College Hill, and will also build 2 playgrounds, water playgrounds or splash pads, one at Plainview and the other one at Harrison Parks. The remaining part of the funding will be used for rehabilitation of the existing bathhouses at the remaining of the pools. So staff is requesting that we complete these rehabilitations and use a design, build, delivery, and effort to build and expedite the improvements. Brian Hill is going to present some more information about these individual projects, but I would just like to note that this past summer was the completion of Phase 2, and we did get rave reviews on not only the pools, but also the splash pads. I think we saw several of you guys actually attending a lot of the ribbon cuttings, as well as attending the pools and splash pads. I know Vice Mayor Johnson was a frequent visitor of the splash pads. So thank you for your support on Phase 2.
Morning. I was going to give some details on some of these locations that we're looking at here. College Hill renovation, it's really more of a restoration to some of the existing infrastructure that we have here. One of the big items we're doing at this location is we're replacing the filtration system with a more updated and a larger sand pit filter. We've had some issues over the past of this filter that currently have, getting the water a little cloudy at the start of the year, gets a little cloudy, we get a lot of attendance, so we're looking to replace the filtration system. We're adding a unisex restroom as part of the bathhouse area and a storage area for the lifeguards to act a little area where they can put their stuff. They're not right there in the front area where all the people come in at, and maybe they can take a small little break from some of the kids during the day. One of the big improvements as well is we're going to extend the deep end area. We're going to create an additional lane, get some more water, get some more space out here. I met with several representatives from the College Hill neighborhood community last night. We discussed some plans. We have some possible changes that we're looking at. We're adding some different shade structures here. There's a big push to want to retain one of the big shade structures there on the west side. So we're working with the developer on that to see if we can kind of move this a little bit more of the sidewalk and some of the pool deck out a little bit to retain that shade structure. The decking, if you've been to College Hill lately, you'll notice that the decking is kind of sinking in many areas. So we're going to be replacing the decking in that location around the whole pool to maintain the pool and keep it going for many years to come. We are adding a water playground at Harrison. This is the, if you remember back from the design phase, this is the big scorpion that got a lot of reviews that people's really excited about. This is Mr. Hauptman's favorite spot. He's excited to see this one going up. It's going to be a great location here. There'll be addition of some playground areas as well. And there's a little walk up on the little berm that's right there in Harrison Park. That'll have a couple slides coming off of it. So there's some dry elements as well for kids to play with. I'm very excited to see how this one works out with all the excitement we had this year. We can't underscore the incredible attendance that we had at the splash pads, the water playgrounds this last summer. We know that they're a hit. We know they're a big feature. So we're excited to see how this new one here in Harrison will also do, as well as this one here in Plainview. This one's exciting because we're adding this one to where we already have an existing shelter and a bathroom. I think we're going to see a huge vitalization of this park with the addition of these playgrounds, water playground. And there's actually playground elements as well. This one's split into kind of two water areas, has a bunch of fountains with things that kind of pop up. They'll go in different, it has different programs where kids will jump at different times, different things. It has some also different playground elements for kids to play on, seating areas for parents. Like I said, this one's going to be excited to see. We already got a lot of calls this last summer questioning where the water playground was for them for this year. So we know that there's a huge interest in the community to see this one go. Turn this back over to Mr. Jansen.
Thank you, Brian. I'm just going to wrap this up. Again, Gary Jansen, Public Works Engineering, talk about a few of the financial parts of this and the timing of the project. As is fairly typical in some of our larger projects like this, we are requesting an increase in the change order limit, 10% of the original contract amount, or $300,000. Without increasing the change order limit, all remaining change orders, or all change orders, will require approval by the City Council. Increasing the staff authority level for change order approval will not increase the project budget. So we never go into these projects anticipating that we necessarily need to do this, but it makes sense to be able to provide a little bit higher authority on the staffing level, and it's worked well on a lot of our larger projects. The existing budget is $22,150,000. The adopted capital improvement program includes $3 million in 2022 for Phase 3. As Troy and Brian talked about, approving this additional budget today would bring the revised project budget to $25,150,000. So during Phase 1 and Phase 2, value engineering during design and construction resulted in some savings. Those savings combined with the budget that we were asking for your approval of today are expected to provide enough funding for Phase 3 and some portion of bathhouse improvements. As we had talked in the past, as we developed Phase 1 and Phase 2 projects, looking at potential costs and based on estimates, the first thing that we set aside mostly was the improvements to the bathhouses that we really wanted to make originally. But we decided that it was better to get the components of the pools and the splash pads done first, the water playgrounds, and then try to come back to the bathhouses if we could. So we do think that we've got some funding to come back to the bathhouses. As Troy mentioned, from a timing perspective, we'd like to do that as a design-build project. Staff has evaluated all of the bathhouses, developed a list of improvements we'd like to see. If we do that between an architect and a contractor, we can expedite that and save costs in the meantime, not having to develop a formal design. So we do plan to move forward with that. Phase 3 project is scheduled to bid this Friday, pending no other issues, so we'll know what the price looks like then, we'll know what's available, and the remaining funding for the overall project, and be able to move forward then as soon as possible with that design-build project for the bathhouse improvements. Staff recommends City Council approve the revised budget, adopt the amending resolution, change order modification, and approve the design-build delivery for the pool house rehabilitations and authorize the necessary signatures, and we would all be happy to stand for any questions.
Is there any questions for staff? Councilmember Claycomb.
Thank you. I have a question, I think it's for Brian. The new water playgrounds, will those incorporate art like we've done in the previous ones?
Yes, they already have the art in them as part of the design. We do have some notes from our artists from the Phase 1, Phase 2 projects that were incorporated into the design, so they have the art elements already in there. Absolutely.
Councilmember Frye.
Thank you, Brian. Mine is somewhat related. I know most of this is waterworks-related infrastructure, but as it relates to College Hill, are we going to be engaging with the design team like we did with the pool remodels? I'm not seeing a lot of art and the special touches that we did with all of our other pool remodels. And is that group going to be engaged, and will this also go back through Design Council for review?
They were engaged early on with the Phase 1 and Phase 2 stuff. We kind of looked at some of the items for College Hill.
Okay, I thought that was the water playgrounds you were talking about.
Right.
When you
We
answered
did
your
as
question.
well for College Hill as well.
Okay, all right.
There were some ideas. There were some color choices that were discussed, some of the different shade structures that were discussed. There's so much money that's going into just the infrastructure on the rehabilitation of College Hill. There's not a lot of room to do much more than what we're already doing at the location. Do not believe we're planning on going back to Design Council on this one. It was already seen by Design Council earlier.
So it has been seen by them?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Vice Mayor Johnson.
Thanks, Mayor. Just wanted to know, could we name the scorpion like the Houtman scorpion?
I'm okay with it.
That was all.
Further questions for staff? See none. Thank you. We'll open it up to public discussion on this item. Is there any public input on this? See none, we'll bring discussion back to the bench. Is there further discussion? Councilmember Tuttle.
Thank you. I just want to take an opportunity to thank staff. I know, especially for Park and Rec, this has really been a labor for love. And in the almost 3 years that I've been on the bench, it's been really exciting to be a part of this and to see this come to fruition. The first time we talked about water playgrounds, I really didn't know what that meant, and I didn't have a good vision of what it would turn into. But I've been very impressed and just glad to be a part of the process. I said way back when we were approving previous thoughts about water playgrounds, and then when I had the opportunity to do the ribbon cutting at Boston Park, that these water playgrounds are really for everyone in the community to enjoy. And I'm excited to see that we're an inclusive community and we try and welcome and invite everyone to our amenities. And even though I myself don't have a family or don't have children, I still went this summer and hung out at some of the water playgrounds and had a great time interacting with the community. So just thank you for your exceptional work on this.
Further discussion? If there's no further discussion, then I will make the motion to accept staff's recommended action to approve the revised budget, adopt the amending resolution, change order modification resolution, and approve the design build delivery for the pool house rehabilitations and authorize the necessary signatures. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion to second by Vice Mayor Johnson. Clerk will open a roll. Members cast the vote. Having received 7 yea votes, that motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Quarterly financial report for the quarter ended September 30th, 2021.
Good morning and welcome.
Morning, Mayor, members of the City Council. Mark Banning with the Department of Finance. Today, I want to present to you the third quarter report for 2021. So just a reminder, the quarterly report reports unaudited activity through September 30 of 2021. So we'll take those 9 months of activity and we'll compare it to the 2021 revised budget, which of course is what you approved back in August. Also gives us a good opportunity to take 9 months of data from this year and compare it to last year. Of course, you know, we've been through a lot of challenges over the last 18 months, so that's a little bit trickier than what it typically is, but we still can do that. But finally, this is a good opportunity for us to project forward to year end and see where we think we might wind up at year end, and even look a little further than that, look into 2022 and kind of give you some ideas on where we think we'll be headed maybe 12 or 24 months into the future. Now, I'd like to think that all my quarterly reports are really important, but I would tell you I think the third quarter report is probably the most important, so I'll probably spend a little bit more time today on the third quarter report than what I typically do. So the key points is the general fund is outperforming the revised budget. That is, it's doing better than where we thought we were in August. The general fund is expected to be balanced, but I will tell you that there's an upside potential. What I mean is there's a fairly high likelihood that we could have a surplus this year. Expenditures in the quarterly report that you have are projected consistent with expenditures. But we're having challenges expanding employment levels. As you know, that's a priority for us, but it's been a challenge for us, and I think that's pretty widely known in our community. So that could lead us to under-expend a little bit on where we projected, which could lead to a surplus at year end. I'll go into a little bit more detail on that in a minute. I want to talk today about transient gas tax, T-bids, and special alcohol. We've talked about those in the past. Those were particularly hard hit by the pandemic, so I wanted to give you an update on those. And again, we'll talk about 2022, and I would just tell you that I think there's upside potential in 2022. So let's look at general fund revenues. A lot of these themes are very familiar to you. They're things we've talked about over the last quarterly reports. Property tax is performing very well. That means that delinquencies are lower than what we thought, which is a good thing. So we should exceed our expectations there. Sales tax continues to outperform. We do believe at some point sales tax is going to go back to the norm, but that has not occurred yet, which is good. So sales tax will exceed the 2021 revised budget. And court fines also continue to outperform, and that's a trend that we've seen throughout 2021. There are a few areas where we have some weakness. Interest earnings, we've talked about that in the past. In 2019, we collected about $10 million. This year, we'll be lucky to collect $1.6 million. So there's been a fairly significant drop. Again, we expected that, but where we missed was we expected the degree to which interest earnings would drop this year. It's basically based on Fed funds rates and the Federal Reserve's policy actions have just occurred a little bit faster than what we thought. Now, if there's any good news, we are exceeding our benchmark. The bad news is our benchmark is the 90-day T-bill rate, which is at about 5 bips. So let's talk about franchise fees. Those are growing. We will collect more this year than we did last year, but they are underperforming where we thought they would be. That's primarily in electricity. Electricity is the largest franchise fee, and so we will undercollect a little bit there. Natural gas, we're actually doing a little bit better. Natural gas is volatile, which we don't like in our business, but it is volatile. But it's based on commodity pricing, and so natural gas prices will drive natural gas franchise fees a little higher than what we expected. Finally, charges for services are a little weak. Again, that's been a consistent theme. Now, if there's any good news there, generally that's city programs for which we charge fees. So if revenues are a little weak, that typically means that our expenditures are going to be under a little bit as well. So let's look at the expenditure side again, and I kind of mentioned this earlier. Our expenditures are increasing, but with staffing challenges that may mitigate our growth in 2021. That is to say, we may not reach what we have targeted in the quarterly report. Most of our expenditure growth is in public safety. That's a consistent theme. Most other areas have very modest growth. In fact, we have a few departments that are actually spending less in 2021 than in 2020. And those are primarily, again, due to staffing challenges for the most part. Again, in our forecast, in the quarterly report, the general fund is expected to be balanced, but there is a probability that we will wind up on the upside, and that if that occurs, that's most likely going to occur because we underspend. Now, ordinarily in my business, that's a good thing. Ironically, we actually would prefer to spend more because we want to be aggressive in filling positions, but it's just been a challenge to do that. Now, if that does occur and we do have a surplus this year, I would tell you I think that is probably more transitory rather than systemic, but regardless, it's a fairly high probability that we'll have pretty good performance this year. So what are we watching in the fourth quarter? The fourth quarter is one of our more challenging quarters. We have a lot of things that are going to impact our projection. Again, we're watching position filling over the fourth quarter, but some of the other things we watch weather. Weather can have a huge impact, particularly snow and ice. For example, we expect to spend our entire snow and ice contingency in the fourth quarter. Certainly it's possible, depending on the weather, we may not spend any of that contingency, but we like to plan for that. So that's a variable that we have. We have a lot of holiday pay around Christmas, particularly in our fire service. Again, depending on activity levels, that pay can go up higher than what we expect, so we keep an eye on that. And just the general year-end spending is sometimes problematic. And then finally, I'd point out most of our revenues we collect earlier in the year, but we do have about about $10 million that we literally will collect 2 or 3 days before the close of the fiscal year. We'll get our last sales tax distribution and our last motor vehicle tax distribution typically around December 28th. So obviously that makes it a little bit of a challenge to forecast. I should point out, you may recall during our budget discussions, we had a long discussion about ARPA. We did expect to spend ARPA money beginning in 2021 to help us fill positions. That is not included in our forecast. We'll probably delay our use of ARPA into 2022. So here's just a summary of what I've told you. Again, we think we'll go from about 253.7 million, and we think that we'll be closer to 255 million on the revenue side, or about $1.3 million better than what we told you in August. And again, this forecast shows expenditures at the same level, but there is a risk that we will not hit 255 million on the expenditure side. So let me pivot away from the general fund for a second, talk about transient guest tax. Transient guest tax was hit incredibly hard by the pandemic, which I think we all know. You can see in the graphic there, the dark blue lines represent our actual revenues. You can see the impact starting in Q3 of 2020. Look how much shorter the blue line is compared to the red line. That is a huge impact. But one takeaway is the blue lines are increasing, particularly the Q3 2021 blue line is significantly higher. That means our revenues are recovering, which is really good. Incidentally, I should tell you, the red lines, if you told me where would we expect the transient guest tax fund without a pandemic, I would have told you the red lines. That's basically our norm. I've looked at some preliminary data for Q4 2021, and I'm fairly confident that when we present the quarterly report next time, I will tell you that the blue bar for 2021 Q4 is going to be much, much closer to the top of the red line. In other words, transient guest tax funds appear to be recovering. So we're pretty confident that we will exceed the budget in 2021 for revenues, and will be consistent with, or maybe even exceed the budget in 2022 for transient guest tax revenues. Of course, T-bid mirrors transient guest tax, so the same story on T-bid with a few variations. Special alcohol, very similar. Special alcohol tax we collect from clubs. Clubs were shut down. Special alcohol taxes cratered in the second and third quarter of this year. But we are seeing a recovery there, which is what we expected. So we think we'll be pretty close, or maybe even exceed our projections this year. More importantly, we think this revenue stream has recovered, and that we will be consistent with where we were in the 2022 adopted budget. So that's a good thing. I'll point out we probably won't reach our pre-pandemic high in 2022, but we will be recovered, we believe. Also, this fund is very well reserved, which is going to serve us very well. We pay for treatment providers from this fund, and there has not been an impact on treatment provider payments, and I would not expect any impact on treatment provider payments, again, due to being well reserved and due to the fact that this fund is recovering. So let me transition to debt. We always show this graphic here. The takeaway is our debt is a little bit south of $1 billion. It's been fairly consistent there this year. But the real takeaway is I think that's green. The green slice there at the 12 o'clock is our GO at-large property tax funded debt. That's about 6% of our total portfolio, or about $57 million, and that is declining. So that's a very small sliver of our total debt. The other components are at about the 2 o'clock position. That's our special assessment debt. That's $127 million. That's a fairly significant portion of our GO debt. The light blue slice at the 3 to 4 o'clock is our water and airport GO debt that's paid with water and airport revenues, but we did issue it as GO debt several years ago. Finally, sales tax debt is at the bottom. I think that's black. That's about $73 million. That actually has been declining fairly significantly over the last 3 or 4 years. That would have been a lot higher several years ago if I would have shown you this graphic. So let's look forward a little bit. I'll do that first on the debt service fund, and then I'll transition to the general fund. Because again, one of the purposes of the third quarter report is to kind of give you a view of what we expect could happen in the future. Now, our debt is going to fluctuate. It fluctuates based on when we issue and how much we issue. That fluctuates typically on our capital improvement spending. So it's not easy to project exactly when and how much debt we'll issue, although it is fairly easy to get the trend correct. So we're pretty confident our GO debt will decrease in 2022 as a whole. However, there are a couple areas of GO debt that we believe will increase in 2022. That is primarily special assessment debt. We've been very busy in special assessments, which is a good thing because that means increased development activity in the city of Wichita. But the downside is, based on our current policies, that means our debt load will increase due to additional special assessment debt that we will issue in the future. On the revenue bond side, again, this is consistent with the adopted CIP, and we do expect, based on the adopted CIP, our water and sewer utility debt, revenue bond debt will increase in the future. I want to talk about debt levels. We've talked about this in the past. There's three things that really have a bearing on debt levels. That's the legal limit, the policy limit, and the rating agency opinion of our debt. The legal limit is the state statutory limit. We are far below that. We're at about 30% of that limit, so that's not a problem. Policy limit is the city council's directive that we should spend no more than 2/3 of our revenue on at-large property tax funded debt. Again, we're in the 40s right now, so we're significantly below that policy limit, although that probably will increase in the future based on our CIP. Let me touch a minute on the rating agency impact on our debt levels. We greatly value what our rating agencies think because they drive our bond rating, which we want to maintain, so we have access to the capital markets. Both our rating agencies think our debt is too high for a variety of reasons, and they put that in writing. I've quoted Moody's here. They say that one of the factors that could lead to a downgrade is further levering of the tax base, i.e. additional debt. Now, they've got a ratings model in which they measure our debt. I would tell you that we are AA2 rated. We're AA, basically. According to Moody's, we should be single A if they looked at our debt. In other words, there's other factors that mitigate our debt, but they are very tuned into our debt levels, and they think that they're too high. S&P has a similar view, although they take a slightly different tilt on it. They believe our debt levels are weak, is how they characterize it. But one thing they have noted correctly is that we do have very rapid amortization of our debt, which means we pay it off very quickly. We pay off our GO at large debt typically in 10 years, which is rapid. So it's important, I think, that we keep that rapid amortization of our GO debt so that S&P will have a favorable opinion of our debt levels. So looking forward on the general fund, a couple of tailwinds, which are good. Health insurance rates. You all approved health insurance rates in October. Based on your action in October, we're pretty comfortable that health insurance costs should be lower than budgeted in 2022, which is a good thing. And of course, that's systemic, so that'll flow through into the future. I noted previously our sales tax base we expect will be higher in 2022. Again, that's a good thing as well. We do have a few headwinds. We have a couple contracts coming up for renewal. We're currently in the process of negotiating those. Where those contracts come in relative to what we have budgeted for 2022 will have a fairly significant impact, of course, on what our ultimate forecast for 22 excuse me, becomes. So we'll see where we're at on those. Excuse me. Another headwind potentially, and we talk about this a lot, our largest expenditure area, public safety, also tends to be our fastest growing expenditure area for a variety of reasons. So sometimes that can be a headwind. And finally, we're a little bit concerned about inflation. There's been tons of talk about inflation. Is it transitory? Is it systemic? That's far beyond my level of competence to give you an opinion on that. However, I will tell you if it's not transitory, that could have a significant impact on our budget going forward. So that's certainly something that we will take a close look at. So again, apologize for the length, but today I would tell you that our revenues are overperforming. That's good. We project expenditures consistent with our revenues, which is to say we expect a balanced budget. But I would tell you that there's a significant probability that we could wind up with a surplus this year. It's going to depend on a lot of activity between now and December, but there's certainly the possibility that that could occur. Just a reminder, as we get close to the end of the year, you're going to see a lot of year-end budget adjustments and final closing adjustments and things of that on your agenda. For example, I think the golf courses were last week. Wouldn't surprise me if MABCD had an agenda item for next week. So you may see a few of those hitting your agenda in the future. Again, those are just our routine things that we do at year end in order to close out everything and fix everything that we need to fix. Let me point out that our quarterly report is online at www.wichita.gov, as well as a variety of other financial information, including CIPs and the adopted budget, our ARPA reports, and a variety of other things. With that, Mayor, I apologize for the length. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for staff? Councilmember Clayco.
Thank you. Mark, when you're talking about the ratings by the rating agencies, and you talked about their concern with our debt, but we have special assessments in there, and a lot of cities don't have those. So does that affect that?
Yes, ma'am, that is exactly right. We're relatively uncommon in Kansas in that we do use special assessments. A lot of states don't. Kansas does. And Wichita probably uses it more prolifically than any other city in the state of Kansas based on the study that we've done previously. Again, rating agencies aren't real comfortable with other forms of geodebt. I don't know that they're that familiar with that process, so it concerns them in general.
Councilmember Fry.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Claycomb stole my question.
Okay. Well, I can answer it again if you want me to.
I forgot to take myself off.
Councilmember Bluebog.
Mayor, I'm going to drill down a little bit further. Have we, what indications do we have if we do further our credit availability on special assessments? Is it plausible to think we would get a downgrade if we continue that?
Yeah, I cannot answer that in absolutes. I can only answer that in conditionals because the rating agencies, there's no red line where you go over that level and you're downgraded. All I can tell you is what they tell us, which is it will increase the risk of a downgrade if our debt goes up. And that's not just SA debt, but any debt. That's all I can tell you. That's the best answer I can give you. They are concerned about our debt levels. It is a drag on our rating, and they watch them carefully. But I can't tell you at what level.
Mark, could you go back to the slide on the Moody's comment? Yeah, that's, Councilmember Bluebog, that's probably the most concerning issue for me is that that first bullet point, the fact that Moody's actually believes that our debt levels deserve an A rating. We are currently at AA2, and it's because of other factors and the way that the council adopts a budget, our financial planning, that allows us to be at a AA2. But if you look at debt alone, we'd be at an A rating. So that, I think, shows the magnitude of that issue.
Other questions? Seeing none. Thank you, Mark. Is there input from the public? Seeing none, we'll bring discussion back to the bench. Is there discussion on the item? There is no further discussion. Then I will make the motion to accept staff's recommended action to receive and file the quarterly financial report for the quarter ended September 30th, 2021. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Vice Mayor Johnson. Clerk will open a roll. And having received 7 yea votes, that motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
PUD 2021-18, city zone change from two-family residential, limited commercial, and general office to planned unit development, number 92 Happiness Plaza, generally located south of East Douglas Avenue at the northwest corner of East Oakland Avenue and South Clifton Avenue, 123, 125 South Clifton Avenue, and 3344 East Oakland Avenue.
Welcome.
Good morning. Scott Wadle from the Planning Department. Thank you for the opportunity to present this. This case is being presented today for a couple of reasons. The Planning Commission and the District Advisory Board recommendations differ. That's one reason. The second reason is that there have been valid protests received concerning this case. The applicant has applied for custom zoning, called a PUD, a planned unit development, in order to allow for the use of the application site for parking to support their properties to the north. Couple of notes on the case. Please note that this application does not determine whether the 3 existing single-family houses can be demolished. That is through a separate process, not this zoning request. In addition, I would also like to note for folks in the audience that the City Council policy is that the public hearing for planning agenda items occurs at the Planning Commission meeting. According to the policy, the City Council does not receive public comments on planning items. In terms of the site consists of 3 parcels at the northwest corner of the intersection of Oakland Avenue and Clifton Avenue, which you can see on the image here. This is just south of Douglas. The subject site is approximately 0.35 acres in size, and it is currently developed with 3 single-family houses. In terms of context, properties to the north are zoned LC, limited commercial, and developed as a commercial center with a restaurant and vacant space. Property to the east, across Clifton Avenue, is zoned GO, general office, and developed as a church with accessory parking. Properties to the south across Oakland Avenue are zoned SF5 single-family residential and are developed with single-family homes. The property to the west is zoned TF3 two-family and developed with a single-family house. In terms of the requested zoning, the proposed planned unit development is largely based on the TF3 two-family zoning district. The staff report includes the text of the proposed PUD. Highlights from that proposed zoning include the following. It would allow parking in the front and street side setbacks, which is normally prohibited in the TF3 zoning. It would require the ancillary parking to comply with standard supplementary use regulations from the zoning code, except to allow parking in the front and street side setbacks where, again, that is normally prohibited. And third, it would allow a farmer's market and require compliance with supplementary use requirements. Again, this is part of the application, not necessarily a recommendation from the MAPC. In terms of review, on October 4th, the District Advisory Board considered the application and recommended denial 6-4. On October 7th, the public hearing for this item was held at the Planning Commission meeting. The Planning Commission recommended approval with the following conditions. A, that a plan unit development certificate be recorded with the Register of Deeds, and second, B, that a copy of the recorded certificate must be provided to the Planning Department. The Planning Commission did not include a farmer's market or the approval to use the space as a farmer's market as part of their recommendation for approval. As part of their findings, the Planning Commission indicated the following, that the proposed parking lot is a quality design that fits with the neighborhood based on the design, again, of the lot. And in terms of suitability, the property is suitable for this use based on the commercial growth of businesses around it. There have been roughly 78 protests submitted on this application. There were multiple valid protests submitted for the protest area, which account for 33.75% of the protest area. Because this exceeds the state 20% threshold, any vote to approve this application will require 6 of 7 votes from the council. A quick note on the protest petitions is that the question did come up about whether or not protest petitions could be withdrawn, specifically on this case. To date, as of about 10 minutes ago, we have not received any withdrawals. A few notes on the public review and input. At the DAB and the Planning Commission, there were many public comments both for and against this application. The agenda item report, which was distributed as part of this meeting, includes notes from both meetings. In terms of the parking requirement, during the public discussions, there have been questions about whether the parking requirements might change if there are modifications to the Happiness Plaza building. Examples of potential modifications that have been discussed include the addition of a small grocery store within the existing building structure and/or a basement location serving alcohol. The answer to whether these changes would increase the amount of parking required is, it depends, but generally, yes, additional parking would be required. It is the Unified Zoning Code that specifies the amount of off-street parking that is required. Depending on the uses, the amount of necessary off-street parking is based on the amount of square footage, the number of seats, and/or the number of occupants. And again, that varies greatly depending on what the specific use is determined to be. Another factor to consider is that the required number of off-street parking spaces can be modified if the property owner applies for a zoning change, administrative adjustment, or a variance. During the District Advisory Board meeting, planning staff were asked if potential changes to Happiness Plaza occurred, then would it result in additional parking being required? Our answer was no. We were posed a similar question at the Planning Commission, and our answer was yes. The answer here at the City Council is it depends, but generally yes, more parking would likely be required, but it is not certain, and it depends greatly on the situation. In terms of the recommended action is for the City Council to, and this is quite lengthy, adopt the findings of the Planning Commission, approve the requested zone change based on the Planning Commission recommendation, place the ordinance on the first reading, authorize the necessary signatures, and instruct the city clerk to publish the ordinance after approval of the second reading. Alternatives include the following. can override the MAPC recommendation, provide alternative findings, and deny the requested zone change. This would require 5 of 7 votes. You can approve with modifications of the Planning Commission recommendation. This would require 6 of 7 votes because, again, it is an approval. And the third listed here is you can return the application to the Planning Commission for reconsideration. This requires a simple majority or 4 of 7 votes. And with that, I'll pause and then I'll take you through the graphics and the images, and then I'll stand for questions. So here's the zoning map. You can see that the majority of the site is currently zoned TF3. Here's the map from the comprehensive plan showing that it's new residential is what's highlighted there in the brown. Here's the graphic submitted by the applicant showing the design of the proposed parking lot. Here's a graphic from the administrative adjustment, which was granted to the property owners to reduce the overall requirement of off-street parking at the site. This was, again, prior to this application. And other graphics, those were included in the staff report. Here's the map of the overall protest petition submitted. Again, I think it was somewhere in the ballpark of 75 protest petitions that were submitted. Here's a closer zoomed-in look at the protest area. Again, the valid protests submitted accounted for 33.75% of the area. Here are photos of the site. These are 2 of the homes. Here again are 2 of the homes. This is from Oakland. This is looking further down the street to the west. Again, looking down the street to the west. So the condominium units that are catty-corner to the subject site. This is the Church of Scientology, which is directly across the street to the east. This is looking at Happiness Plaza, and you can see 2 of the homes located south of it. Happiness Plaza. This is looking further west down Douglas. Here's an aerial of the site. And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Questions for staff? See no questions for staff. We will go into discussion. Councilmember Cirillo.
Thank you, Mayor. First off, I need to disclose that I have had ex parte discussions with both sides in this case. I have kept an open mind until today, and I have not made my decision yet. And we'll see how this discussion goes, but I needed to make that disclosure. Thank you.
Further discussion? Councilmember Tuttle.
I have also had conversations with parties from both sides, so just want to make sure that I disclose.
Further discussion? If there's no further discussion, the chair recognizes Vice Mayor Johnson as this resides in District 1.
Thanks, Mayor. Let me follow the trend. I've also talked to both sides recently. So this probably has been the one zoning case, maybe 2 now, that I've had the most feedback. This one is unique because there's been so much support as well as objection to it, which has caused a lot of really good discussion. And during that discussion, some things came out, both from the applicant as well as the neighborhood, that I think may help in this decision. So from that conversation, what I would like to do today to encourage more discussion around parking and develop an actual plan for College Hill is to move to defer this item to December 14th, 2021. And I would love to have our planning department work with the neighborhood and private sector on parking for that entire area and see how this may or may not play into that. And I think that will help College Hill going forward with this and future developments. That is my motion.
So just for point of clarification, the motion is to delay the item and revisit it on December 14th, 2021, in hopes of coming up with a overall plan from staff concerning parking in this area. Is that an accurate description of the motion?
It is, and this would play into that. They would be able to see if this is warranted or not.
Excellent. Well, to speak to the motion, I'll second the motion so we can open up for discussion. Councilmember Bluebog.
Thank you, Mayor. What does that look like? Is that a neighborhood meeting? What's the deliverable that we're looking for in the next 30 days?
Yeah, if I could provide some insights, and again, this is a conceptual idea at this point, but I believe that it would take some community meetings, both perhaps something of the scale of an open house, but most certainly focus groups to talk to individuals about their parking needs and desires for the community. In addition, we would be using input, the substantial amount of input that's been received so far, and we would be bouncing off of the community to make sure that we've heard their feedback about what the priorities and what the sticking points are. We would also engage with a parking expert from across the country to come in and help us out with some ideas about what solutions have worked in other communities, not to guarantee that they would work here, but rather to check and see if there's something that people want to look into. I don't believe that at the end of this process that we would have a thick formal document or plan, because December 14th is right around the corner, especially when you consider the holidays. But what I would hope that we could accomplish in order to help achieve this would be to identify areas where there is general agreement to at least move forward and look into further. And those might be things as simple as time-limited parking in certain areas. They might be things such as looking at crossings, just a whole scope and variety of things.
If I can supplement that, Councilmember, we have a firm here in Wichita that we do work with on parking, so it's not as if we have to go out with a full-blown RFP. We have a contractual relationship with a firm, and so that's who we would use to help us explore some options. And as Scott mentioned, we already have a significant amount of input from residents, so it's not as if we're starting from scratch and would have to have a full-blown engagement process. But we do probably want to be able to share some options before we brought something back with the council.
Vice Mayor Johnson.
Thanks, Mayor. Just to provide more clarity on that, there have been residents that I've spoke to that previously, well, not that specific resident, previously there were concerns about the narrowness of the street, parking on the street. And what I began to hear now is some residents not concerned about that and willing to have folks park in front of their house on both Clifton and Oakland. So my hope is that by engaging everyone, we can see where the community feels comfortable with on-street parking and encourage people to park there, working with the businesses that are looking to expand. And again, if this lot is needed, that would be known as well, and the community can work together on that. So that's the hope of this, and I think will provide great insight going forward.
Further discussion on the motion? Motion has been made and seconded, and just to review, it is to delay action on this item until December 14th, following more community engagement. Is there any further discussion? If not, since the motion has been made and seconded, clerk will open a roll. Members cast the vote. Having received 7 yea votes, that motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Zone 2021-42, city zone change from single-family residential to two-family residential on property located 1/4 mile north of West Central Avenue and 1/2 mile west of Northwest Street.
Welcome back.
Good morning again. Scott Wadle from the Planning Department. This application is for a rezoning of a property from SF5 single-family to TF3 two-family in order to allow for the construction of a duplex. The subject property is generally located northwest of Central and West Street at the northeast corner of Murdoch and Young Street. About the site, the subject site is currently zoned SF5 single-family and is vacant. The site is a little less than 1/4 of an acre in size. In terms of context, the surrounding properties are zoned SF5 and developed with single-family homes. As you can see here in the aerial, here's the zoning map. In terms of history and recommendations, the public hearing for this item was held at the October 7th Planning Commission meeting. The Planning Commission recommended approval of the application unanimously, 11-0. No one spoke in opposition to the application. On October 4th, the District Advisory Board recommended approval of the application 5-0, so unanimous again. No members of the public spoke in opposition at the DAB meeting. Valid protest petitions have been received for the requested zone change. The total percent of the valid protest are 14.42% and does not exceed the 20% state threshold. It is recommended that the City Council adopt the findings of the MAPC and approve the requested zone change. Place the ordinance on the first reading, authorize the necessary signatures, and instruct the city clerk to publish the ordinance after approval on the second reading. This would require 4 votes or a simple majority of the council. Alternative actions include the following. The City Council may deny the requested zone change, provide alternative findings, and override the recommendation of the MAPC. This would require 5 votes or 2/3 majority. You can approve with modifications to the Planning Commission recommendation. Again, that would require a simple majority. And you can return the application to the MAPC for reconsideration. And this, again, would require a simple majority. I'll take you through some of the images and graphics for the case. So here's the zoning map. Here's the map from the comprehensive plan, again, showing residential use is recommended. Here's the total protest, here's a protest map showing 14.42% is accounted for as part of the protest. And that, in fact, is the reason why you're hearing this case, because valid protests were submitted. Here's the property. Different sites in the area. Back to the subject site. And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Other questions for staff? If there's no questions for staff, is there discussion? There's no further discussion, and Chair recognizes Councilmember Claycomb as this resides in District 6.
Thank you. Thank you, Scott, for the presentation. As noted, there was no one spoke in opposition at the 2 public meetings that were held. And with our need for housing stock, I think this is an empty lot, part of our infill strategy. However, this needs to fit with the character of the neighborhood, and I don't think you showed that rendering, but we will make sure that it fits with that. So with that, I move that City Council adopt the findings of the MAPC and approve the requested zone change, place the ordinance on first reading, authorize the necessary signatures, and instruct the clerk to publish the ordinance after approval on second reading, subject to the duplex being built in a style and quality largely consistent with the proposed rendering submitted in the application, and subject to such design reflecting the character of the neighborhood.
Second. You just second it? Yes, I will recognize the seconding of Vice Mayor Johnson. So motion has been made and seconded. Clerk will open the roll. Having received 7 yea votes, that motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Change in council meeting schedule.
Chair recognizes the city manager, who wants to meet with us one more time this year.
This is an enjoyable way to spend a Tuesday. So, Mayor, we originally had not scheduled a meeting for next Tuesday because of the National League of Cities Conference and the council's desire to attend that conference. It's now been switched from an in-person conference to a virtual conference. And as a result of that, we do have a significant amount of business that we'd like to transact at a council meeting next Tuesday. So we're asking you to adopt next Tuesday, or actually to schedule next Tuesday as a regular council meeting.
All right, is there any discussion on the item to ensure that we meet next Tuesday? If there's not, then I'll make a motion to accept staff's recommended action to approve changing the council meeting schedule to make the November 16, 2021 a regular council meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Vice Mayor Johnson. Clerk open roll. Members cast their vote. I've received 7 yea votes. That motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Councilmember appointments and comments.
Let's start off with appointments if possible. I will be making an appointment to the Diversity, Inclusion, and Civil Rights Board by appointing Anthony Mai. So other appointments, Councilmember Fry.
Thank you. I would like to appoint Pastor Larry Wren, W-R-E-N, to the Ethics Advisory Board, and I have submitted his information to the clerk.
Is there any other appointments at this time? There are no other appointments. I'll make a motion to accept the appointments.
Second.
Motion is seconded by Vice Mayor Johnson. Clerk will open the roll. Members cast their vote, please. I've received 7 yea votes. That motion does pass. We are back on announcements. Are there other announcements for the good of the body? Vice Mayor Johnson.
Thanks, Mayor. Just wanted to make a comment. Being a member of this body is an honor to me, and representing the district that I grew up in and being able to positively impact the diverse communities of District 1 is tough but very rewarding work. Prior to and during my time on council, I have sought the advice of more than one former District 1 council member, as well as other council members who served on this body, regarding all manners of issues that I've had a chance to weigh in on. One of the things that each one of those individuals talked to me about more than one occasion was making sure that I read my council packet, that I came to the bench informed and prepared, that I would ask questions before the meeting so I can explain to other people what was on our agenda, and sometimes just for information myself. They continue to let me know that the bench is the space that is given to us to make changes or potentially bring up concerns, and that it was incumbent that rather than make assumptions or any allegation, that we do the tough work of asking questions and getting to the bottom of issues in that moment. One of the issues that comes to mind of a really good outcome for our city is the work around the hotel development at Eisenhower. Members of this body asked questions, stated concerns about what was going on, and our competent and highly qualified staff then did some work and responded to our concerns. And I believe Wichita benefited from doing our job. But recently, we've also seen what's possible when we choose not to do our job. 4 innocent Wichitans had their faces plastered online in a web of theories for nearly 15 hours before a 5th innocent Wichitan was added. All of this occurred because one member chose to jump ahead in the gutter politics and take a photo of their screen rather than hit the button and speak and address those issues. Our job is a tough one. It isn't one meeting a week. It isn't just agenda review. It requires effort and engagement. It requires us to speak up at the bench rather than take photos and run another failed play from the same playbook we saw in 2019. When I've had no sleep because of a crying baby, when I was physically and emotionally drained due to protests throughout our community, even when I had COVID at this time last year, and even now working to unpack a house, I do my job, I do my homework. And I just wanted to say that I intend to continue doing that job for the next 4 years as I have the past 4 years. Thanks, Mayor.
Further discussion? See none. With that, I do want to thank the members who were able to attend the Veterans Day Parade. It was well attended, so thank you to the members of the council who were able to be there. And thank you to our veterans. Just a reminder to folks who might be watching, Thursday, City Hall will not be open in recognition of Veterans Day. So therefore, if you have business to get done at City Hall, please just note that Thursday we will be closed in recognition of Veterans Day. If there is no further discussion, then I will make the motion that we adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Councilmember Fry.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to recognize our 2 new council-elect members in the audience, Mike Hoheisel and Maggie Ballard. Thank you for being here, and congratulations. Look forward to working with you.
Motion has been made and seconded. Clerk will open the roll. Members will cast the votes. We would ask that all council members cast the votes, every single one of us. Having received 7 yea votes, that motion does pass. We are adjourned until next week. Thank you.